Hello, and since I can't be there today, I thought I'd give a little presentation on Frieze patterns from your textbook. Now, a Frieze pattern is a transformation that's linear, so it goes left to right instead of being transformed into mapping up and down or rotation. So everything on the transformation is going to be a linear transformation along the line. Now, Frieze patterns are used in decorative things. You could see them in this case, they had it in this pot right here, or you could see it in your bathroom tiles. Uh, you could see it in tilings around homes. You could see it on some of the um, building that you do on your house. There's some frieze patterns built into those constructions. So frieze pattern, we're going to use the same type of things that we used in the other ones. We're going to use uh, translations, which they're going to note as T. 180 rotation, so we're only going to do 180 degree rotation on these, which we're going to do R. So we're continuing on our thing. We had 180 degree rotation, two different types of reflections, horizontal and vertical. And we have a glide reflection. Those are going to be our 5 different transformations that we're going to have on a frieze pattern. As I said, these are vertical. If you look at this right here, you can see this pattern right here being repeated over and over again. This one's a translation. You just pick it up, move it over. Here's a translation of the same thing. So the first one here is a translation, horizontal translation. So that's what we have here. That's a T. So this is a T if you describe it by these letters. Now this one could have 2 different ones, because if we want to use this as our pattern, we have to rotate it. But if we want to use 2 of them as our pattern, we can just use a translation. So we have 2 different choices here. If we use this pattern right here, that is our small piece, then we're going to need to rotate it right about this point to make it match up. So this is a 180 degree rotation. This one would be an R. But if we took a bigger piece or bigger chunk of this and we went all the way out to here and just looked at that piece being moved, then that's just a T, a translation. So it just depends on whether you look at the smaller piece or whether you look at this piece. It could be either or here. So there's more than one answer on that one. And there's going to be more than one answer on this one as well, because you could see a translation if you look at this. It looks like if we map it out to right about here, then it's a translation. You take this whole chunk and you move it over. This is a translation. But if you take a smaller chunk of it, take a smaller chunk right here, then it's going to have to be reflected, because it has to be flipped over. So if you take this smaller chunk right here, it has to be flipped over. There's a reflection right along this line. So it's a glide reflection. You just glide it down here, then you flip it over. So that's a glide reflection, which in this case is a G. So that one, if you take a smaller chunk, you got a glide reflection. Take a bigger chunk, it's a translation. All right, and then this one right down here, it looks like we're folding it right there. Vertical vertical reflection. So that would be V here for a vertical reflection. You could also, so if we take this chunk, that's a vertical reflection chunk. So that's a V in our thing. But if you take a bigger piece, which is this piece right here, we can translate it. So that's a T. So you have 2 choices there on that as well. This one you don't have 2 choices. Usually what happens if you have 2 choices, one of your choices is going to be a translation. So let's take a look at the second page here. It gives you a list of all the different types of frieze patterns there are. So you could have a translation. So you take this chunk, move it down by translation. You just keep moving it down. This one, on the second one, you could have a translation and a rotation. So you'd first of all, you'd take a point right here in the middle, you rotate it 180 degrees to create that one, and then you take this chunk and translate it. And that's what you got here, 180 degree rotation and a translation. Now on this one, it says you're going to do a horizontal glide reflection. So you're going to go down the middle here, and you're going to glide this one down here and reflect till you get this piece. Once you have that piece, then you're going to take the whole chunk and translate it to get the other pieces. So glide, reflect, then translate. Now this one, the fourth one, is a vertical line reflection first. So you reflect here first, then you take the whole chunk and translate. Now it looks like all of these have some kind of translation because you're sliding along the line. So on this one, we're going to start with the horizontal glide reflection. So you're going to take the line down the middle so that we can do that. So we're going to take this chunk, we're going to glide down here, reflect it, so it becomes this chunk right here. So on the first thing, you only get these two. Then you're going to reflect it on this line. So that's going to generate these two because they reflect back over. So you get all four then. And then you translate that big chunk to get these other big chunks on the same line. So that's what happens there. Now this one says we're going to start with a horizontal glide reflection, so you still need the line here. So you're going to take this chunk and you're going to glide reflect it till you get there. You're going to take the vertical line reflection and reflect, and then you're going to do a 180 rotation and translate. So maybe we'd start with a smaller chunk here. So if we start with this one and we do a horizontal glide reflection, we get this. So that's what it says, start for us first, and then do a vertical line reflection. So we'd have to take this and reflect on a vertical line. So we would probably want to reflect here because we want to reflect across and get the same thing. Okay, or actually we could reflect there and get the same thing there. Reflect here, get that one, and then we're going to do a 180 rotation, which is right here. This would rotate around to this piece here, and then we translate that whole chunk to the next one. All right, so this one has the most. It has a glide reflection, a vertical line reflection, a horizontal line reflection, a translation, and a rotation of 180 degrees. So all of that happens here. So you should be able to identify all of those things happening in this picture. So I can see the horizontal glide reflection. This glides down and flips over and it matches up. This piece matches with that. I can see the vertical line reflection. You can see a vertical line reflection right here and right here. There's more than one reflection. You can see the horizontal line reflection because it does reflect right across that horizontal line there. It does reflect there as well. You can see 180 degree rotation. So if you put this point right here and you rotate right there, these four will be rotated 180 degrees. And if you take this big chunk right here and you translate it, you get the next one. So all of those could be found in that the last one there. So as it says here, you want to look for the pattern that has a 180 degree rotation, because if you could see a 180 degree rotation in there, then it's got to be this one or this one or this one. So if you see a 180 degree rotation, it's one of those three. If you don't have a 180 degree rotation, it's one of the other four. So you're looking for, that's how you separate the pattern so that you can see what you're possibly looking for there. So you're looking for what kind of pattern you can see. And if you can see a lot of things happening, then you're going to have more letters together. This one has every one of them, all 5. So those are our 7 classifications. And that's what they're going to be asking you to do on some of these. All right. Okay, here's some examples in the last part of the textbook here before you hit the assignment. We're going to look at these things right here and see what we can see here for classifications. So if you look at this, there's a rotation. So there's an R there. Okay, there's a translation. There's always a translation. Is there a reflection? Can we reflect this way vertically? Is there a vertical reflection? Can this reflect to that? Yes, there is a vertical reflection. Is there a horizontal reflection across the center here? Can we correct? There is. So that's a horizontal reflection. And then let's see, is there a rotation? We did that one. Is there a glide reflection? That's the last thing. Is there a G there? So can we glide this and reflect and get the same thing? Yes, we can. If we take this thing and glide it and reflect it, it looks the same thing. So it looks like all of them work on this one, and that's what it says in the solution. All right, now this one right here, you can't, let's start with the vertical line. We can't flip the vertical line because then the horses wouldn't match up. Can we rotate it? No, because then the horse would be upside down. Translate, there's always translate, so this is always a translation. Okay, horizontal, so if we drew a line through here, can we reflect there? No, because then the horse would be cut in half. And then there's the glide reflection. You go down and you flip it over. None of the horses are flipped over, so this is only a translation one, and that's what it says here. Okay, and the last thing you're going to be asked to do is just draw some of them. So what you want to do is draw a nice simple pattern that you could copy over and over again. Here's an example of a tile that they use. So they do a T and an R on here. So a translate, pick this up, translate it to here. But they also have a rotation that starts right here first. It's a T and an R. So whenever you do a T and R, you always do the rotation first, then the translation. Translation should be the last thing you do on a Frieze pattern. Take this and you rotate it at 180 degrees, then it matches up with this tile. So this tile becomes that tile, and then you take this whole piece right here and you translate it till it gets to there, and it goes on forever. So that's how you would do that with a tile. So that's what Frieze patterns are, and that's what they look like when you're drawing them or when you're identifying them. So what you're going to need to do is, in your notes, you're going to need to write down these types of classifications, and you have to write down what each one means. T stands for translation, TR stands for translation, 180 degree rotation, TG stands for translation and glide reflection, TV stands for translation and vertical reflection, THG translation horizontal reflection and a horizontal glide reflection. So all of these have abbreviations, so that goes back to the first thing here. We have all of these abbreviations, so you're going to need to know what those are, so you need to write those in your notes so that you can use them on the test. So if you have any questions, you can ask me on Tuesday when I come back to class, and that's a video about Frieze patterns.